Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Hold no punches.
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig? Today is Tuesday, May 14th, 2024. Coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. The National Black Lives Matter group says a top left dark money group has mismanaged millions of its cash. Two board members will be here to discuss their lawsuit against the Tides Foundation for what they say withholding $33 million. The 2024 National Black Voter Project survey results are in. The director of the Black Voter Project will join us to discuss the findings. In Dolton, Illinois, the city council has appointed a mayor pro tem amid Mayor Tiffany Henyards FBI corruption investigation. Also, we're talking to another Tarrant County, Texas commissioner about the district attorney's vindictive decision to try to re-convict Crystal Mason, who was acquitted of voting illegally by an appeals court. Also, the body of U.S. Senior Airman Roger Fortson who was killed in Florida by a deputy has been returned to Georgia. Also, calls for the resignation of the Houston Independent School District Superintendent Mike Miles after a news investigation reveals his charter school network that he owns in Colorado is siphoning money away from Texas schools. In tonight's Marketplace segment, we will hear about a husband and wife team's initiative to make 500 black men homeowners. And lastly, why does an old white man try to go after a black woman in a scooter in the grocery store? And she knocks his ass out. Yeah, we're going to show you the video. It's time to bring the funk. I'm Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Let's go.
Whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, roll, roll, y'all. It's Roland Martin, rolling with Roland now. He's funk, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now.
The Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation is suing a progressive nonprofit group that they say has been withholding necessary funds. The lawsuit accuses the Tides Foundation, which has managed hundreds of millions of donations for progressive groups since it was founded in 1976, of fraud and withholding more than $33 million in donations. Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation board members Shaloma Bowers and Cicely Gay join us right now. I'm glad to have both of you here. So, okay, let's jump right into this. So, first of all, for folks who don't understand, there are organizations that out there serve as what we call as fiscal agents for nonprofits. Is that the role that the Tides Foundation had for the Black Lives Global Network Foundation?
It's good to be with you, Roland, and that's exactly right. And, you know, for far too long, organizations like Tides have been insulated from the radical accountability that Black Lives Matter demands from institutions like the police and, you know, politicians. And so last week, we announced a landmark lawsuit against the Tides Foundation, which does operate as a fiscal sponsor and as a manager of donor-advised funds for rich folks. Your audience might be wondering, what is a fiscal sponsor? A fiscal sponsor is an organization that lends their tax-exempt status to a smaller organization or a project, you know, organizations that in many instances are Black-led, doing movement work in exchange for a fee. But what people would be surprised to know is, although this model has been in place since about the 1950s or so, there's no legislation, there are no laws that actually regulate this industry. It doesn't exist. And so
what fee has Tides been charging the Black Lives Global Matter Network Foundation in order to handle transactions?
So it ranged from 3% to about 8 or 9% over the course of 2020 to about 2022.
Now, when you say it range, normally, look, I mean, I sit on nonprofit. I've sat on nonprofit boards, sit on one right now, where we actually serve as the fiscal agent. It's 50Can. We serve as the fiscal agent for some groups, and the fee is pretty much negotiated and locked in. So, how did this fee fluctuate?
The Tides Foundation actually has a number based on the amount of assets. So up to a certain percentage or amount, that changes the amount of percentage that you hold.
Does it go up in terms of more money? So normally what happens is if you are bringing in more money, the percentage goes down.
That's exactly right. That's typically how it works with the Tides Foundation. And some of this, of course, is, legalese, and it's got to be admitted in discovery. And so we can't give all of the details, but that is exactly what happened in terms of our contract. The amount actually went down based on the amount of funds that were allocated in the Global Networks account. And I do want to say, Roland, this is really important to add, that it has been months since we asked for a detailed accounting of these finances at Tides. I've been on emails, many of them, for at least 6 months, where we've been saying how much is there. Not only are they taking the fees, I want to be clear that many of these fiscal sponsors are fiscal agents, and Tides is one of them, will also hold the money and gain interest on it. So they are holding your money. They are essentially providing a service for you, because maybe you're a small nonprofit or a new nonprofit, but they're actually gaining interest on the money that they're holding on your behalf. And that is not included in any of the funds that we're able to eventually get our hands on or distribute.
So, so based upon whatever your arrangement is, what is the normal process? Do they disperse a set amount per month? Do you request a certain amount? Or is it a matter of whatever funds comes in the month of May, that money is sent to you in June? What's the process?
It's a great question, and it really does depend on the specific context. And the usual situation of a fiscal sponsor, they are essentially operating as a quasi-financial institution,
right,
which is what we allege, right? They are paying vendors, right? If you want to pay a vendor because they're doing work, for your project, you would let your fiscal sponsor know, and then they write a check, send those dollars from you that are earmarked for you, that have been raised by donor, raised by the project, specific for that project. and they would send those dollars to, for example, that vendor. So and they do that type of admin work. For the specific arrangement that we had with Tides, they were doing grant making on behalf of the organization, BLMGNF. And so we tell them where we'd want to send out grants. And then, the result of that was supposed to be that they'd send those grant dollars out to that organization. At some point in time, though, right, once you are on strong footing and ready to continue in your own independent way, which was the case for us, we now, have our own 501c3 status. We're able to be transparent and accountable on our own. We don't need Tides. Well, those dollars are supposed to be sent to the organization, right? Because they were raised literally from donors with the intention of them going to Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation. In this instance, Tides has refused to turn over those dollars in the way that donors have intended, and we're talking about 33 million plus, but we actually really don't know because they have failed to give us something as simple as a statement to what Cicely mentioned earlier.
When was this set up and who set this up? So how long has this been this way?
So it was set up in 2020, and it was set up by the previous board, previous executive director. And it was done in the moment of a global uprising, right? And in that moment, the Black Lives Matter decided it made sense to ensure that there was a fund that was started at Tides, again, that would allow us to do the work of grant making while we did the paperwork to set up our 501c3 status.
So the previous board created this relationship. You said that was in 2020?
That's correct.
All right. So now we're in 2024. And you're saying that you've been on phone calls, you've been sending emails, and Tides will not give you an accounting of, one, how much money is there, two, when they're going to send. What you're seeking that you have all of the assets that have been donated on your behalf transferred over to you.
That is correct. In fact, it wasn't until this lawsuit was filed, and I do want to say that we went through attempts at mediation. We asked for an extension on a statute of limitations. We were up against a timeline in order to conduct this lawsuit. So we tried lots of options to get them to move in their position, but it wasn't until this lawsuit went public that we found out that $12.5 or $6 million went to another organization that we didn't even know about. We didn't know about that amount.
I'm sorry, hold on one second. So when you say $12.5 or $6 million went to the other organization, you're saying that Tide sent $12.5 million of money that was for the Black Lives Global Network Foundation sent to another group without your authorization?
That's right. We found that out in the news. We found out that it went to another Black Lives Matter organization
What's the organization?
The group is Black Lives Matter Grassroots.
Okay, so the Black Lives Matter Grassroots, y'all have been in, that's Melina Abdullah, and y'all have been back and forth in contentious with them because they were a part of the global network, correct?
Yeah, I wouldn't say we're in contention because they're not a part of the network. They actually filed suit against us, and an LA County judge dismissed that suit and made it very clear that the suit was frivolous. And so to find that, funds had been sent to one organization, even after Tides themselves have said in the media recently that the intention was not that the money goes to one organization, was quite jarring for us, and ultimately a demonstration of how someone needs to be paying attention to how organizations like Tides and other fiscal sponsors are operating.
So the reason I asked that because, and this is where I think for the purpose of the public, folks have no idea who's who, who's what, who does what, who's involved in what. And I remember interviewing Patrice Cullors, and then of course when she left, I've had Melina on as well with Black Lives Matter Grassroots. And so So explain to us exactly what is the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation? What is it? Who runs it? And what do you do?
I came on this board in 2022 after working with and for nonprofits for 25 years as a newly formed board. There are 3 board members, and I do know that everything that I'm telling you now can be found on blacklivesmatter.com in our Transparency Center, right? So there are 3 board members who run the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation. We are a legitimate 501c3 organization who is on pace to be the largest philanthropic abolitionist organization to ever exist. In the last 2 years of being on this board, I serve as board chair, we have had our heads down. We have been working behind the scenes. We have been building infrastructure. We have been legitimizing ourselves and committing to accountability and transparency as it relates to all of the dollars that have been entrusted in us. And not only that, we have committed to give money through grant making, as a traditional foundation would, to Black-led frontline organizations. We've done that to the tune of over $35 million, some of those being Black Lives Matter chapters, but not only, other organizations that are doing the work of Black people around the world. And so we are the largest abolitionist philanthropic organization under the moniker Black Lives Matter. We are blacklivesmatter.com, and we are here to be accountable and transparent. We have a strategic plan, strategic pillars. We have focuses of emphasis, but we are an operating foundation that is working on behalf of Black people and doing right by the funding that was invested in us from the very beginning.
Okay, so Shalom, I'm looking. So go to my iPad, Anthony. So right now there are 3 board members.
That's right.
Shaloma Bowers, Dejane Parker, Cicely Gay. That's a rather small board. Normally, boards, you might have 6 to 8. So, who's the chair of the board?
That's me. I am the board chairwoman.
Okay, so you're the board chair. Okay, how many board members do you plan to have?
Yeah, it's so great that you asked that question. We've actually had a team of advisors, attorneys, accountants, and nonprofit experts who have helped us build out a plan to grow our board. We want to be honest here. A lawsuit is a distraction, both financially and otherwise. And so for the last 2 years, we've attempted and invited 2 attorneys actually to serve on our board. And unfortunately, for a lot of reasons, they have declined. Some of those reasons include the scrutiny, the misinformation, the lawsuits that we've unfortunately had to encounter. So it's difficult to grow a board, Roland, when you're constantly in the news, when people are lying about you and saying that you're mismanaging funds. But it is absolutely our intention to not only invite 2 people to join the board, but even more qualified individuals to make up a comprehensive board and build this organization the way that it should be.
So previously, obviously, when Patrice was over the organization, there was activism, there was a lot of different things, there were all kinds of different pieces. Okay, so right now, what exactly do y'all do? Are y'all like, what do y'all do?
Yeah, it's a good question. And so I'll just expand on what Cicely had mentioned, in terms of our pillars. So to see the full potential of Black Lives Matter, right, realized at scale, what we're trying to accomplish in the world, right, a world where Black people have what they need and want in order to thrive. We operate across 6 different pillars, one of them being frontline organizing, the other being research and education, the 3rd being culture, the 4th being policy, the 5th being arts, and the 6th being healing justice. And so everything that we do, be that granting money and actually doing the work, operate under those 6 pillars. And so we're not a traditional foundation in the sense that we only give out dollars. We're a hybrid organization where we give out dollars and we do the work in those 6 different pillars.
Okay, so and as it relate to that, you don't have chapters, correct?
That's correct. In 2020, chapters and the foundation, right, the Global Network Foundation, folks who were in movement space came together, and there was a call-in. To be quite honest, a call-in about the lack of transparency, a call-in about the lack of accountability, and a call in about the lack of chapters having the autonomy to be able to do the work that they needed to do on the ground. And so there was an agreement that there would be a separate container for the organizing that would happen on the ground, and that the Global Network Foundation would turn into a philanthropic organization while also helping to achieve the goals of, that all of the Black Lives Matter organizations, have been set out to do for the last decade plus.
So what is that separate container? What is that?
So BLM Grassroots was supposed to be that, right? But as we know is the case in any movement work, things get messy. And there are disagreements, and that is okay, right? And so while BLM Grassroots was initially supposed to be that concept, well, what we've seen is...
Sorry, when you say the concept, meaning initially BLM Grassroots was supposed to be a part of the Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation.
BLM Grassroots was supposed to be the container holding the chapter organizing and chapter.
Got it. So y'all were separating things, meaning BLM Grassroots was supposed to be the place where chapters were based, and now were they supposed to be a separate entity?
That's correct. They were to be a separate entity. What we saw though were chapters that did not want to organize under the banner of BLM Grassroots. And so they formed their other autonomous organizations. We saw things like BLM 10, et cetera. What I'm getting at is the wisdom that we had to ensure that organizations doing Black liberation work could be autonomous and could fundraise on their own and could not be tethered to the Global Network Foundation. Well, that is essentially what led to the separation, and it has been something that's worked, right? I mean, aside from some of the drama that has made its way in court filings frivolously, it has largely worked. Again, $35 million plus have gone out the door in 3 years to these Black-led organizations, be that a Black Lives Matter chapter or just a organization that is doing the work in a different name, doing the work of abolition. It has worked, and we will continue to obviously ensure that Black liberation is funded at scale, and that is the genius, in my opinion, of what folks put together in 2020. Meaning, we can't realize the goals of Black Lives Matter without the finances to be able to do it. And we've never in abolition had a institution as well resourced as Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation to be able to fuel that work and to fuel the work of activists and frontline organizers on the ground.
And so so let me just walk back a little bit for the people who are watching or listening who don't quite understand, because Black Lives Matter took off in the public space after the hashtag was created after the George Zimmerman verdict. And then when Patrice, Alicia, and I'm leaving out one person. Okay, I said Opal. Then they tried to trademark Black Lives Matter name, but because it was already in the public space, they couldn't. So what the folks don't realize, and this is I think this is partly why there's a lot of confusion, because what people don't understand is there are a lot of entities out there right now that have Black Lives Matter in their name that are not actually associated with the foundation or with Black Lives Matter Grassroots. And so when people say, well, look at Black Lives Matter did, it's not necessarily the case, because it's like the NAACP, you can't create your own NAACP chapter unless you're part of the NAACP. But you can actually create a Black Lives Matter group that's not affiliated with any of y'all, correct?
Yes. Roland, if there is one thing we want people to walk away from this interview understanding, it is that. It has been one of the most complicated pieces of information that I've been working to clarify since I joined this board. So much so, in fact, that there has been a foundation called the Black Lives Matter Foundation that was actually founded by a white person that ended up giving all the money to the police, right? It was raised millions of dollars. And so it is very difficult to ensure that our messaging and our position...
Folks, don't speak past that. So you're saying that was this the group out of San Francisco?
Yeah, out of California, yeah.
California, yeah.
So that was a group that was formed, and because I remember there were some corporations that gave, and then when they found out, they pulled their money. So you're saying that there was, or does it still exist?
It still exists.
Yeah.
1 second, Shalom, go ahead.
I was going to say it still exists to my knowledge, and it's confusing. Thankfully, we've been able to work with folks to ensure that there's folks know the real Black Lives Matter, but it still exists.
So Cicely, you said millions was given to them. Do you know how much?
I've read up to 10 million, and that's in the news. I certainly didn't fact check it. I do know that before I joined the board, I did my own research to ensure that I was partnering with the organization that was aligned with my own mission and life's work and values, and that wasn't the one.
But you said that foundation gave the money to police?
They did.
Gotcha.
For their own records.
Okay. So hopefully folks now now understand in terms of all back and forth. So let me now go back. So the grant that you provide, meaning, so let's say there is a social justice group out there right now, and they want to apply for a grant. First of all, have you established that in terms of the grants that you give, are these 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, 50,000, or do you look at it case by case to determine what you fund?
I worked in philanthropy for 10 years, Roland. I come from the foundation world. I've only worked with nonprofits my entire life. And so I recognize as board chair that we've got to establish strategy around our grant making. We do not have one formula around the grants that we make. However, all of them have to ensure that they're aligned with our strategic values and our mission. We do have grantee applications, reports. We have check-ins with grantee organizations. Most of them have, however, been based on relationships that we've either pursued, identified, cultivated, and then brought into the fold to invite to receive dollars. A good example of that is Elaine Brown, the former chairwoman of the Black Panther Party, who just received $1 million grant for housing out in Oakland through her organization, Oakland and the World. Elaine Brown came to our attention because her work met every single one of our strategic pillars. It is not just community revitalization, it's workforce development, it's Black liberation. And we formed a partnership with her. And we want our grant making to not just be money in, money out. We want to really make a difference in the lives of Black people for the long term, and our grant making has to strategically reflect that.
And so, but I'm asking, so if there's somebody out there, they have a group, and they choose to submit a grant application, can they do that? Where do they go?
We don't currently have our grant making open right now to the public. We may in the future re-release another RFP, a request for funding proposals. But given that our work has right now been about putting our heads down and building the infrastructure of this organization, it's been our priority to do that, to fight the lawsuits and accusations. And hopefully in the future, we can open up general RFPs again for nonprofits who want to partner with us.
Obviously, there was a lot of attention that came the organization's way when the announcement was made how much money they had received. What was it, 90 million or 60 million? So the announcement came out. You've had audits and things along those lines. And obviously, you still trying to figure out how much do you have from tithes. So as an organization right now, how much do you have as an organization right now?
Oh, well, I can certainly say we are not able to. We haven't looked at a bank account statement as in right before this this show rolling. But I can assure you, every year we file a what's called a tax form 990, where folks are able to literally see how much money we have, who we've given our dollars out to, and it was why we decided to become a independent 501c3 in the first place, which was because we knew that there would be a level of transparency and accountability that would not be possible if we were just under the Tides Foundation, which you're not able to really see, with all of the projects that exist, what dollars are going where and what dollars have come in for whom, right? And so our bold move to become a 501c3, I'm saying bold in the sense of abolitionist organizations, movement organizations that largely sit under fiscal sponsors, was a radical step in transparency, despite what folks reported as, right? We did that. We could have just decided to stay under, for example, Tides, and folks wouldn't even know that we had $90 million. That would not be a news story had we not become our own 501c3 organization. And so, folks can expect to see, all of the things that they're looking for in terms of that transparency in our upcoming 990 filing, for those that are interested. But I want us to focus on the piece that is really important here about Tides Foundation and our inability to continue doing the work that we've demonstrated of grant making, of getting dollars to the front lines, of Black-led organizations doing the work of liberation of Black people. We are not able to do that in the way that donors have requested, given the dollars they've given to us, because $33 million is being held at Tides Foundation under a concept, that isn't, where there's no regulation, right? And so, through this lawsuit that we filed, actually, let me just say one thing about the Tides Foundation. The Tides Foundation has amassed over $1.4 billion as an organization where all they do is move money around. That's all they do. They actually don't have any legitimate, work that they do separate from. We move money to different places. $1.4 billion they've amassed doing that. That is more than 740 banks that exist that have regulations tougher than the the tax rules that exist for Tides. The fact that an organization cannot get a statement, the fact that an organization can't get its money back, the fact that an organization has to even take the steps of filing a lawsuit, that all is a result of unscrupulous organizations like Tides moving dark money around and us having, not having the ability to have a check and balance in place. And so ultimately, we will be able to do more of the good work we've already done if Tides Foundation simply turns back over the dollars to the organization that donors intended it to go to.
So I'm looking at, this was a story from Bloomberg Law, and it says that resources in, this is from Tides, I believe, resources in the Black Lives Matter Support Fund were never intended to be granted to large, well-funded national organizations like Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation, and were always intended to be granted to local Black Lives Matter chapters. So here's where I'm trying to understand here, all right? Because it says here there was a 2020 oral contract. So are you telling me you do not have a written document that spells out the relationship between Tides and Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation?
I would love to just point out the hypocrisy in that statement just for a second, because just in simple reading of that, the dollars were never intended to go to large organizations like Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation, but $12 million went to one organization. It does. I mean, honestly, it doesn't even make sense because it is a lie. The Tides Foundation, we went to the Tides Foundation, and this fund was set up for the benefit of grantees that Black Lives Matter wanted to send, make grants to, and ultimately would be returned to us upon request when we were ready to, stand on our own 2 feet.
Right. No. So what I'm asking is do you have a signed document, or was this an oral contract?
Both. There's both a signed contract and there's an oral contract as well.
Because when I read this statement here, it gives me the impression that Tides is saying we get to decide what chapters get the money and how much.
And that's the issue with the fiscal sponsor model. The fiscal sponsor model, which is, again, created by an IRS rule, says that in order for a fiscal sponsor to exist, they have to have 100% authority to determine where the dollars go. So if you think about that, Roland, what that is basically saying is fiscal sponsors would have to advertise that in order to get projects under the organization, they'd have to advertise as follows: come to us and sign an agreement, and we control all your money. You have no say in it. You can't say it goes anywhere. We control your money, but please do sign up with us. Would you sign up? I mean, who would do that, right? It doesn't even make sense, and that's not actually how it works in real life. Although that might be the tax regulation, what actually happens is there are oral conversations that are between the fiscal sponsor and the organization, where they say things like, absolutely, we are going to make sure that your project is funded. We're going to make sure the grants that you want to go out the door. Absolutely, we're going to make sure that these people that you want to pay and bring on board to do the work, to support your work, are paid. And don't worry about it, but sign this document. So you actually end up having both a written agreement, which, by the way, the Tides written agreement, which we'll be able to produce, as this case moves forward, 2 pages. 2 pages covered $33 million. That's how you know something is not right. But what is matched with a written document are verbal agreements that are made that only create create the relationship, right, that help form the relationship between the project and the fiscal sponsor. And so that's why we're saying there are both, because that is how fiscal sponsors end up even being able to get projects to sit under them, is by giving them verbal assurances and making verbal promises as part of a verbal agreement, in addition to written documents.
About 2 or 3 more. Cicely, you want to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say many of them, Black and brown-led organizations that don't feel like they have a choice. If they're unable to receive grant funding in any other way, they don't have the capacity to have a lawyer, they don't have $90 million, what are they going to do but sign and do their best to be able to do their best work with what's been presented to them? There's a really good example of how this happened in Baltimore a couple of years ago after the death of Freddie Gray. A group called Strong Baltimore was doing the same thing as a fiscal sponsor. 150 Black and brown-led organizations had to rise up to try to get an account of their money and their money back. It happens more often than we will believe, but unfortunately, the organizations that are being exploited don't have the resources to fight back.
As it relates to again how your infrastructure, you're the 3 board members. You've had criticisms of board members are doing work and being reimbursed for the work for the foundation. Is that the case? Has that been separated? Are any of you 3 board members receiving any financial benefit from the foundation, or are you hiring outside groups to handle the work that needs to be done?
So I can say that as a board, none of us make money from being board members. That is correct. My firm has been widely reported. My firm, I do have a consulting firm, a progressive consulting firm that does social justice work, that was onboarded prior to me being a board member, and that we've essentially been the staffing company for Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation.
That was before you became a board member.
That was before I even became a board member.
Okay.
Right. That's how I was introduced to this work, right, as a strategist behind the scenes doing the work of liberation, not as a board member.
So now that you're a board member, your company is no longer involved in any of that.
My company is still doing that same exact work, and we'll continue to do that until we're able to stand on our 2 feet in terms of creating a foundation, an organization that has its own employees, really, that are not subject to the attacks that have been folks who've been part of the organization have been subject to.
So I then have to ask this, Cicely, because frankly, and look, I've been on boards. I'm a 3-time board member of the National Association of Black Journalists. Other groups, Student First, 50 Can. And doesn't that, though, pose a conflict to have a board member whose company is also doing work for the foundation that's receiving financial benefit because you're making decisions? So the reality is, if something happens with the company, something comes up, well, then you're one of the folks making the decision. So should that be separated? Should it be either you're a board member that receives no personal financial benefit, or simply be a consultant to the organization but not be a board member? Explain that.
Yeah, thanks for asking that question. As a new board member and then board chair, we had to pull the covers back and look and ask these very questions. We have a fiduciary responsibility, but we also have a responsibility to ensure that the organization doesn't completely implode. And so if we do have a firm who, with our own conflict of interest policy, with our voting policies, with lawyers who are checking to ensure that Shalomia is not voting, for instance, on his own contract, if all of those things are true and this contract is in place that is standing up the organization, that is not, his contract is not profit. It is staffing. That is the full staff. Over a dozen people I interact with all of the time that are helping to stand up this organization. I had to assess risk as a board member, and I had to say, if this is gone, and if this role is gone, what will happen to our viability as an organization?
I totally understand that. But what I'm getting at is, I totally understand what you're saying, that you need to have staffing. But the problem is, it's a company of a board member. So if you talk about transparency, doesn't it make more sense to say, hey, we need these services that your company provides, and that means that you need to remain in a consultant role, not in a board member role, because board members are deciding on contracts. I'm trying to understand, how did you reconcile that? Because that leaves you open for criticism of self-dealing.
It does, which is why our books are tight. Everything that we're doing is regulated by attorneys. We've got people in place to ensure that there is no self-dealing by virtue of having conflict of interest policies. But I want to lean back into what Shalomia said. It's that this is not a long-term solution. And I said we've got to
But okay. This is what I'm trying to understand. And Shalomia, what you just said. If y'all met and said, you know what, look, we're putting this thing together, we need to keep this in place for the next 18 months. I will serve as a consultant for 18 months, but not a board member. The problem is, from an outsider looking in, you're deriving financial benefit while being a board member because it's still your company. And what I'm saying is, how does that not run afoul of your own conflict of interest?
Because I don't vote on my. So first off, I want to make sure that I say that I understand the perception. I understand what it looks like, and we will continue to do our best to make sure folks know that there is not anything nefarious or improper happening, despite what that perception might look like. And part of what's important this is a very common concept amongst nonprofits that Black, brown, white, You will see it in every instance where there are board members that are sitting on a board, where there is a company that they might be working for, partner of, own part of, what have you, and the organization does work with that firm, and it's a conflict of interest policy that is created to ensure that there are no rules that are violated, and to ensure that that board member is not part of any of the decision making related to the work of the organization with that firm. And so it's a very common concept. I think what you often see is Black organizations get scrutinized more heavily than white organizations for something that is very common, and that's what's
No, I'm not. First of all, I'm not talking about white people, and I'm talking about white organizations. I'm Black. Look, the National Association of Black Journalists, our budget, it's not like we got even a $5 million budget. And the reality is, as a board member, I could not have a company that was doing business with the organization as a board member. I couldn't. I mean, that would just, so again, that's a part of, again, what critics have said in terms of how it's set up. Me personally, I just think, to be perfectly honest, I think it's a lot cleaner in terms of for the three of you to say, Shaloma, I move to a consultant role. My company will perform these services. I will be a contractor for the foundation. And then once the decision is made by the board to say, hey, we can now hire staff, then they can move to a board position. But that's just sort of how I see that. Last question I do have here is the properties that were purchased, the $6 million in property. Do you still own those properties? Have you sold those properties? And do you still have them? How are they being used?
Well, I want to make one correction. It's property, despite what we see of all the claims that we've got out there about there being dozens. The organization has one property that was purchased, and it was purchased legitimately for work related to the creators. The creator's house is what it is known as. We call it campus, but it was created to ensure that Black creatives have a space to do their work, in addition to serving as a compound for meetings and organizational work that we have on our plate.
Gotcha. So it's in Studio City. It has 6 bedrooms, bathrooms, swimming pool, soundstage, office space. And so what you're saying, it's being used, it's functional.
It's functional.
Who gets who gets to use it?
We brought together, and Shalomi, I'm sure was going here, families, over 100 families, impacted families who have been impacted by police violence, to recently have a healing moment and healing space through one of our grantee partners. And it was a beautiful experience of coming together of impacted families at the home itself.
Okay, so who gets to use it? That's what I'm saying. I mean, obviously, it's a compound. Is it in use 365 days a week? What type of creators? How do you manage that?
We do not have the programmatic infrastructure completely built out right now on a regular basis publicly for the Creators House. As I mentioned,
again, I'm curious. What kind of creators? When we say creators, what does that mean?
Yeah. We had a group of our HBCU ambassadors recently. We're really proud of our Student Solidarity Fund, where we granted money directly to HBCU students. We brought together our student ambassadors, where they came and they stormed and they gave us ideas. We filmed all of it. There is, like you said, a soundstage and studio in the back. We do have strategic partnerships that we're building out so that folks can use the space. And one of the examples is what we did with our HBCU partners.
So for example, we often, my network, we often come to LA, and again, I'm just talking about creators. This is what we do 7 days a week. Is that a place that we could come, stay for a week, set up, shoot stuff there, and what's that process? That's what I'm trying to, like, how does that work?
Yes, I can say 100% yes, Roland. If you wanted to, as long as the work is to do, to seek Black liberation, and that.
Well, shit, that's what the Black Star Network is. I mean, that ain't no if. That's what we do.
That's what I'm saying. If that's the work, and I'm saying that because there are some Black organizations that do good work, but they work in partnership with the police, for example.
Got it.
Right? So if you're not hitting all the principles of abolition, then most likely the answer to that will be no. But if you are, and there's alignment, then yes, reach out. We'd be happy to see if there's additional alignment so you could utilize that space. What we're getting at is the purchase of that property, right? It is for long-term visionary work.
Oh, I got it. I know it's purchased. Y'all still have it. How it's being used. So again, if creators out there want to, and again, people who are watching or listening also want to apply. If they want to do it, is there a form on your website where they can go to and say, hey, I'm a creator, I'd like to be able to use the facilities?
As of right now, we have artists in residence. So we just talked about that. Cicely just talked about that 150-person event we just did at that property.
Right.
That was done by our first artist in resident that utilized that property to be able to hosted by our first artist in residence. Her name was Osai, to be able to have a place to think and create. And so it is invitation only at the moment, but if it works out and we can be in part.
Right, but see, so this is not badgering, but I'm trying to get you to understand from an outsider looking in.
Yeah.
If you're doing grants, and I have an organization, but there's no process to apply for one right now. If I'm a creator, but there's no process for me to apply to use the facility to create, the problem is, if I'm an outsider, I don't know any of this, so therefore, if it's invite only, and we're not doing grants right now, from the public standpoint, it then becomes, what are you doing? Yeah. And so that's why I'm asking these questions, because literally, I got people in our chat doing the same thing. Is it a rental property? Do you have somebody managing it? Is it the process? Or is that a part of what you're all building together? That's because, again, trying to just get arms around what this thing is, because I'll be perfectly honest, from this whole thing was, how it was set up from the beginning was greatly flawed. Because it was so many different pieces, and y'all been trying to untangle all these pieces to bring some hierarchical order, and that's why I'm simply asking that. So will you get to the point where, okay, yes, folks can apply to utilize the space, and there's a process to do so, but right now there isn't one. There's no place on the website. If somebody interested, they would just send an email, I guess, to your website, your address on the site, right?
We actually
public at the moment, if that's your question. It is not open to the public, if that is your question. It is something that we utilize internally to achieve our work. And yes, we will make it clear in due time, what that looks like for folks that are interested in becoming an artist in residence, for example, to utilize that space.
Got it.
But of the issue with abolition is we've done a really good job talking about the systems that need to be abolished, torn down, and we've not done a good enough job dreaming and envisioning what society will look like once those institutions are removed.
But I'll say this here, and we've been trying to get y'all on for a long time. Y'all got to communicate more and better. Because we've been trying for a long time to get y'all on, because I know what white media is doing. I see it. I saw what the attacks were on Patrice. I saw that was a wholesale, there's a flat out effort to completely destroy not only the organization, but the movement itself. I know how the right wing has been working. But what's also important is regular communication, especially with those in black-owned media, to explain these things to our people so their narrative doesn't gain a foothold. I think a huge part of the problem with Black Lives Matter, the foundation and grassroots and everything, is that the narrative has been cemented because of mainstream media, right-wing critics, and not being able to fully communicate to our people to be able to have them with ammunition to be able to fight back over the narrative that's already been established. Cicely, go ahead.
Roland, you're right. It's actually 2 years from the day that we first were on your show. We had a media roundtable. You broadcast that live back in May of 2022 when we first came together as a board. And you're right. People want information. So we've done our best at allowing that information to be in places where people could access it. But I have to be honest with you. We deserve grace as a new board. You can't come into a new organization with no infrastructure and expect to have every single program ready. You can't expect to have every single document in order. We've created hundreds of regulatory documents, responded to state inquiries in every state. The first thing we did, Roland, in 2022 was to file our taxes. So I'm asking people to give us grace to
Listen, Cicely, I've had to take over multiple black news outlets that sucked, that lost money for 20 years, had to rebuild them from scratch. But at the same time, while that is being done, communicating to your core audience is critical because you already know what the right wing is doing. But when you got black folks who saying BLM ain't shit, I ain't believing nothing they say, the $6 million house, all this sort of stuff like that, I'm just simply saying I understand when a narrative gets set, it is extremely hard to be able to establish a correct narrative. And so all I'm saying is a lot of this also was the lack of information. And again, it was nothing but New York Post article, Washington Examiner article, the Free Beacon, and all the right-wing folks. And I'm just simply saying 2 years to black-owned media is not a good thing. So hopefully, now where y'all are now, you're going to have regular communication to be able to establish what you're actually doing so people have a full understanding. Final comment from Cicely, final comment from Shamola. Go ahead. Shalom, go ahead.
Thank you, Roland, for the opportunity to reintroduce ourselves. I want to just remind folks that we are absolutely here to usher in a new wave of accountability and transparency. I personally am a black mama, a single mom of 3 black boys. That is why I took this role. It wasn't for the accusations of mismanagement or theft. It was to commit to my people. And that is why I've done my job over the course of the last 2 years to build out the infrastructure and do right by the people who invested in us when they donated to this foundation in the first place. Roland, we are coming out publicly. It's why we are here talking to you as black media, is because we love black people. And I want people to be invited into the fold, to rejoin our work and our mission, and to believe in us, and to give us a chance to build out this foundation as everyone hoped we would when they marched in the streets with us back in 2020 and before that.
Shaloma?
What I will just say is just keeping it back on what today is about, where we are announcing an unprecedented lawsuit against the Tides.
Well, no, trust me, I'll be reaching out to them to get some comment, but go ahead.
And I pray you keep the pressure on them, because you'll get comment quicker than we will, most likely. What this action is about is when we moved into the philanthropic space, right? We said we would only do so if we brought the spirit of disruption that we only know in terms of, what we do in the streets, in terms of a movement and a community. That is on display here by challenging what some people would call crazy, right? The $1 billion fund that, is the progressive fund that ensures that all of the Democratic aims and goals and politicians, get elected. We are challenging a lot of rich people, right? Folks who don't typically get challenged. And that is the disruption that we promised to do when we became a philanthropic organization in 2020. And that is what this is about. And I'm hopeful that we'll be able to ensure that new rules and regulations are announced, which is what we're seeking through this lawsuit, for organizations like Tides that have acted unscrupulously, and to ensure that black nonprofits and projects don't get treated the same way we've been treated, where we are not able to get back $33 million that donors have donated directly for the work of Black Lives Matter Global Network Foundation.
All right, then. Well, we will be following and see where this lawsuit goes. We appreciate both of you joining us. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Roland.
Thanks for having me.
All right, going to go to a break. We'll be right back. Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. A lot of y'all have been asking me about the pocket squares that we have available on our website. You see me rocking the Shibori pocket square right here. It's all about looking different. Now look, summertime is coming up. Y'all know, I keep trying to tell fellas, change your look, please. You can't wear athletic shoes every damn wear. So if you're putting on linen suits, if you're putting on some summer suits, have a whole different look. The reason I like this particular pocket square, the Shibori, is because it's sort of like a flower and looks pretty cool here versus the traditional boring silk pocket squares. But also I like being a little different as well. So this is why we have these custom-made feather pocket squares on the website as well. My sister actually designed these after a few years ago. I was in this battle with Steve Harvey at Essence, and I saw this at a St. Jude fundraiser. I saw this feather pocket square, and I said, well, I got some ideas. So I hit her, and she sent me about 30 different ones. And so this completely changes your look. Now, some of you men out there, I had some dudes say, oh man, I can't wear that. Well, if you ain't got swagger, that's not my problem. But if you're looking for something different to spruce up your look, fellas, ladies, if y'all looking to get your man a good gift, I've run into brothers all across the country with the feather pocket squares saying, see, check mine out. And so it's always good to see them. And so this is what you do. Go to RolandSMartin.com/pocket squares. You can order Shibori pocket squares or the custom-made pocket squares. Now, for the Shiboris, we're out of a lot of the different colors, and I think we're down to about 200 or 300. So you want to get your order in as soon as you can, because here's what happened. I got these several years ago, and the Japanese company signed a deal with another company, and I bought them before they signed that deal, and so I can't get access to any more from the company in Japan that makes them. And so get yours now. So come summertime, when I see y'all at Essence, y'all could be looking fly with the Shibori pocket square or the custom-made pocket square. Again, RolandSMartin.com/pocket squares. Go there now.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kim Coles.
Hey, I'm Donnie Simpson.
Yo, it's your man Dion Cole from Blackish, and you watch
Roland Martin Unfiltered.
All right, my pound, Dr. Mustafa Santiago Ali, former senior advisor for environmental justice, the EPA, out of D.C., Randy Bryant, DEI disruptor, Washington, D.C., and Joe Richardson, civil rights attorney out of L.A. All right, Mustafa, you heard that interview for the last hour. Your thoughts?
Well, you know, it always goes down to infrastructure. If you're going to start anything, you've got to make sure you got the infrastructure in place, because it helps to eliminate a lot of the stress. So I hope that they're able to do that. It sounds like over the last couple of years, they've had difficulty in being able to get those pieces in place. You know, in relationship to the Tides Foundation, folks got to also remember that if somebody's a fiscal sponsor, and I've actually been in organizations where we were fiscal sponsors, we carry the legal responsibility for those dollars that come in. So I'm sure that they are also doing their due diligence to make sure as they move money around that, you know, the entities that are receiving it have everything that they're supposed to have. Because when it comes back to the IRS will be looking at the Tides Foundation and not the other entities as the first person responsible for the utilization of those dollars. So I hope folks are able to actually get everything together, get the things that they need in place, and be able to do the work that I know so many folks are hoping that they do, because I know a number of other very dedicated to our community organizations that actually are in partnership with Tides. So I'm hoping that folks can work everything through.
Here's what I saw as the big problem here, Randy. I go back to the beginning. I remember, and I disagreed with organizers when this started, very much like Occupy Wall Street, where there was this notion of decentralized leadership and group consensus. I'm like, I'm sorry, when you're establishing something, you have to have hierarchy. And I think, frankly, God bless Patrice and the others, but they tried to do way too much without an infrastructure in place. I remember they had the foundation, they had a political action committee, they had the grassroots piece. It was a lot. It was like a whole lot. And then when she left, you sort of had like 2 board members, or was it 3? It was all over the place. And so you did not have infrastructure. What I have said to numerous young folks, you can complain all you want about the NAACP, and there are valid criticisms that have been made about the National Urban League, about other groups, but the reality is they still exist because of infrastructure, because of processes, because of order, because of hierarchy. And I think the challenge that Cicely, Shaloma, and the other young lady are under is you're trying to harness this massive thing. And look, I'll go ahead and say it. When they announced how much money they raised, they opened the door for all the criticism. But you know what, Randy? NAACP and the Urban League, they got more money than Black Lives Matter got. They ain't never released their number, and they have not opened themselves up for the level of criticism. So all of this, I think, were errors that were compounded by leadership and the lack of a real strong infrastructure.
Right. And it seems as if they are trying to like back in this and try to get a hold of some things that unfortunately were not handled in the first place. They're trying to build the foundation.
Right. Trying to fix your house and your foundation got cracks in it, when the reality is a foundation with cracks gonna always screw the house up.
Right. Right. But I still do. I appreciate the effort. It does seem as if that their mission is right. And so I do hope that and it does seem as if they're slowing down and trying to make some better decisions. I know I couldn't help but to think, should there be almost like a name change or a rebranding? Has too much damage been done to that Black Lives Matter? I mean, the fact that it took us this long to even get an understanding of who they are and how they're different from everybody else, I'm just almost wondering, going back to the foundation, if there almost needs to, start back at the bottom.
Yeah, I mean, Joe, I think it's very legitimate because I remember when Patrice came on and I interviewed her, and when she was still with the organization, and I was asking her a lot of the same questions, I literally could not explain to somebody, even after the interview, the structure of BLM. I just couldn't. It was like, okay, we got this, we got this, we got this, and I was like, well, who's over that, and who's over that, and who's over that, and it was all over the place. And so, right, I think this is one of those things where I think you have to break it down and then shed pieces, and they alluded to that in terms of this whole thing with BLM grassroots. And look, that's been a legal battle, and in this whole deal, it's been all over the place. And again, but it all goes back to how you establish your foundation, your infrastructure. Go ahead.
Yeah, let me give you some legal and some moral. I looked at the lawsuit, looked at the causes of action. There's about 300 pages that are attached. It doesn't look like the MOU, and there are 2 of them, was attached. What that means is, I mean, I could be wrong, but what that means is they don't want the MOU. In other words, BLM Global does not want the MOU to count because the MOU is going to be contrary to the oral agreements. What they're saying is the MOU was not an integrated agreement. There's usually an integration clause that says everything that we talked about is encompassed here, and so nothing else counts. They say that there's no term like that there, but we can't see it to know one way or the other. So it's going to be a question as to whether or not, even though what the members, what brother was on, was saying kind of rings true, the whole idea that we wouldn't give you money that we couldn't control or have some say in terms of what goes on with, they're going to go by the paperwork. And so they don't want the MOU to count. I think the people being sued do. Now let's step over to the moral side. To your point, they have been taking a bath on perception for a long time. Black Lives Matter has been. If you say you support Black Lives Matter, you say you don't support Black Lives Matter, what are you talking about? Talking about the organization? Which one? Which branch? The idea that Black Lives Matter? The concept, right? Oh, the march that we saw out here where a bunch of people not connected to Black Lives Matter or different organizations, raised hell, did what they wanted to do. And so people, again, need the nuance and need to do the work. But the Black Lives Matter folks, including the ones that we just had, have got to help them. In other words, they've got to be able to have enough clarity, and maybe it isn't a name change. They've got to be able to have enough clarity where people can look at them and say, okay, that's what this means. And again, to your point, avoiding the appearance of impropriety is just as important as anything. So even this board situation, you can't do what white boards do. You can't do what other boards do. Why? Because people are subscribing something to the concept, to the 3 words of Black Lives Matter. So even the appearance of impropriety or something people can say are going to be used by people that don't want to see the other side of it and want to tarnish your mission. And so that's why you have to deal with it.
It is going to, look, when you hear we have an oral contract and a written contract, Joe, I'm sure as a lawyer, you're like, oh, now you walk in. Because listen, I don't care. You put every damn thing down on paper.
That's what we start off with all the time. I had this and that happen, and I was in a contract, and something happened. I said, what does the paper say? That's my first thing. Is there an integration clause in the agreement? Meaning nothing else from the outside of the agreement comes in. Theoretically, that protects everyone that signs it. So it's going to be interesting, and I think it's going to be difficult. We'll see what happens, because what they may argue is if it's true under IRS purposes, that the sponsor organization actually gets to control everything. It sounds like to me, don't hate the player, hate the game. It sounds like to me you have a larger argument with the entire system and the law itself. So maybe that lawsuit becomes a bigger lawsuit or a bigger drive to undo those or get something rewritten so the person doesn't on paper relinquish control. So that you're counting on an organization to say, wink, wink, no, we got you, we'll do what you want to do, until, of course, things change. Like, I don't know, in a situation where different organizations with the same name are fighting against each other and still fighting against each other, and on some level may want to undermine or benefit from the confusion, that's exactly what you have here. And that's the problem. So you definitely want to get everything done in paper, but you want to deal with the perception too. And can absolutely destroy you. And again, I go back to infrastructure and foundation. You're now battling the initial agreement that you had no part of. And the folks who did that are gone. Those leaders are gone. And the fiscal agent is saying, we have this agreement. So now the battle is going to be in this lawsuit, what actually holds up. How do you reconstitute it? And you heard Cicely say they tried mediation. So clearly mediation didn't work. And so now it's going to be an absolute legal battle. And here was, unfortunately, for Black people, it's going to be a lot of money spent on lawyers. And that's less money that can go to organizations to fight for Black liberation. All right, folks, got to go to a break. We come back. We're going to talk about the continuing assault against Crystal Mason. Yes, I'm calling what Tarrant County DA Phil Sorrells is doing. This is absolutely constant attacks and intimidation against this woman. It makes no sense. We'll talk with 102 Black Tarrant County commissioners next on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. Support our work. Join the Breeding Funk Fan Club. Senior check and money order to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. Cash App, $RM Unfiltered. PayPal, R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com, Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. And download the Black Star Network app. Y'all, we should be easy at 100,000 downloads. Apple phone, Android phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Xbox One, Samsung Smart TV. Back in a moment.
Fanbase is pioneering a new era of social media for the creator economy. This next generation social media app with over 600,000 users is raising $17 million, and now is your chance to invest. For details on how to invest, visit startengine.com/fanbase or scan the QR code. Another way we're giving you the freedom to be you without limits.
This is Reggie Rock Byfield. You're watching
Roland Martin, unfiltered, uncut, unplugged, and undamn believable. You hear me?
All right, folks, the effort of Tarrant County District DA Phil Sorrells to reinstate Crystal Mason's voter fraud conviction is absolutely vindictive. Last week, Sorrells appeared before the Tarrant County Commissioner's Court defending his pursuit to re-convict Mason, who was acquitted of voting illegally by a Texas appeals court. The twist was Mason's provisional vote was never even counted. So why is Phil Sorrells wasting taxpayer time and money going after a woman from a case in 2016? Joining me now is Tarrant County Court Commissioner Roy Brooks. Roy, always glad to see you. Of course, my days covering the city council there in Fort Worth, and so definitely glad to see you. What the hell is your DA doing? This is an 8-year-old case. The woman actually went back to federal prison because when she got charged and indicted, that violated her parole. And so, is he absolutely just wasting the money, the taxpayers' money in Tarrant County pursuing this case?
He absolutely is wasting the taxpayers' money in Tarrant County pursuing this case. What he is doing is actually persecution, not prosecution. The appeals court has ruled that she did not knowingly cast a fraudulent ballot. They have discharged her conviction, have overturned her conviction, and then here comes the current DA, who was not even the DA at the time that she was charged and tried for this offense. This is years later. He comes and decides that he's going to try to appeal the overturning of her conviction.
Now, here's what I'm confused by. He stood before y'all last week and basically said the court, those judges got it wrong. They didn't do their jobs right. That's essentially what he said.
Well, he's a former judge, and he thinks he knows everything. But this was a panel of judges that overruled this conviction and set Crystal Mason free. And I don't think that this one former judge is smarter than they are. An absolute waste of time. It is partisan politics at its absolute worst. This is MAGA-style partisan politics, and it just has no place in Tarrant County.
I told your fellow colleague, other commissioner, that y'all should put Crystal Mason on the agenda every single meeting. And y'all should haul his ass down there and force him to face the public. I believe that y'all should also, as a commissioner, demand an audit of his office to find out how many man-hours have been put in regarding this case over 8 years and how much money that has cost the taxpayer. Because this is one woman, and the crazy thing is, her own probation officer testified that she was never told by the feds that she could not vote. But he just insists on pushing forward. To me, this just makes no sense whatsoever. So how are you and the other commissioners, how are y'all going to try to get through to this DA to get him to stop this harassment of Crystal Mason?
probably the best thing that we can do is to march citizens down there every time Commissioners Court meets and take the kind of testimony from the citizens that we did this past week. There were, I don't know, pretty close to 100 people who spoke. That can happen week after week after week. Don't know that it'll do any good because we don't have a majority of the votes on the court. But it can certainly keep the issue on the public mind. It can keep it front and center in the local news. And who knows, it may have some impact.
Well, I think that should happen. They should be, look, Dallas County Commissioner John Wiley Price, he protested outside of Parkland Hospital damn near 20 years. I think this has to, he needs to feel that heat every single week. The public this needs to be made a major deal. And so again, I hope you and Commissioner Simmons, hope y'all put this on the agenda every single week so the other commissioners know that this harassment of this woman makes no sense. They can move on to some other cases versus trying to pursue an 8-year-old case against Crystal Mason. Commissioner Brooks, I appreciate it.
I appreciate you, Roland, and all things. And it's good to see you again.
Yes, sir. Thanks a bunch. All right, folks. And I said when I've been talking to some folks, when they do have this next major rally there, we'll be there broadcasting live because that is important. Folks, when we come back, the body of a black Air Force airman shot and killed by a sheriff in Florida returned to his family in Georgia. We have the video for you. And also, the superintendent of Houston Independent School District, Mike Miles, ooh, he got some questions to answer. Is he siphoning off money from his charter schools in Texas to pay for budget deficits for his schools in Colorado? A new investigation details that, and now there are demands for state and federal investigation. All that next on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network.
Next on the Black Table with me, Greg Carr. Dr. Gerald Horne, a man regarded by many as the most important historian of our time. He provides us a history lesson I'm betting you've never heard before.
Texas enslavers who planned to continue the conflict even after Appomattox, even after the formal surrender of Robert E. Lee.
Dr. Horne talks about his new book, The Counter-Revolution of 1836, Texas, Slavery, and Jim Crow, and the Roots of U.S. Fascism. You do not want to miss this conversation. Only on the Black Table, right here on the Black Star Network.
What's good, y'all? This is Doug E. Fresh, and you're watching my brother Roland Martin Unfiltered as we go a little something like this. Hit it. It's real.
All right, folks, I told you about all the drama happening in Houston Independent School District, which, is pretty crazy, with the removing of principals, the firing of janitors. You got Mike Miles trying to close a $450 million budget gap. But now he has to deal with a different issue. Brett Shipp, who was a reporter there, dropped a bombshell report last night that has reverberated all across the state of Texas. Check out what he's reporting about literally millions meant for kids in Texas being sent to Colorado to pay for the deficits of the schools that Mike Miles owns there. Watch this.
Public schools are battling huge budget deficits and having to make massive cuts. Spectrum News has discovered millions of Texas public school dollars being diverted out of state. What's more, the man believed to be responsible, Houston Public School Superintendent Mike Miles, his old charter schools in Colorado are in need of cash. in schools all across Texas.
I pray tonight that as you guys are back there in that back room and you're making these decisions, that the faces of our children and their families are at the forefront of your mind.
Dedicated teachers.
School districts are being forced to make major cuts.
And panicked parents speak out in passion and frustration.
And I honestly feel like tonight we're holding a moment of silence for public education, and it's heartbreaking.
The state of public education in Texas is dire. We have educators leaving the profession. We have schools that are talking about closing in different parts of our state.
One of the largest budget deficits in the state, Houston Independent School District, where newly appointed Superintendent Mike Miles has called for dramatic cuts to offset a $450 million budget shortfall. Miles was appointed by Texas Education Agency Commissioner Mike Morath to take over and turn around the struggling school district last summer. 10 years before he took over at Houston ISD, Miles spent 3 years as superintendent at Dallas Independent School District. When he left Dallas in 2015, Miles started 3 charter schools in Colorado called Third Future Schools. According to both internal school records and the nationally recognized school rating agency School Digger, all 3 schools have since struggled with performance, enrollment, and finances. The records provided to us by TFS through open records requests also reveals Miles was forced to close one of his schools last summer due to declining enrollment, leaving that school with $5 million in unpaid bond debt. The school's debt was discussed at a Third Future Schools board meeting via Zoom last summer after Miles had taken over at Houston ISD. Yet there was Miles at the meeting acting as a consultant. According to payment records, Miles earned $40,000 consulting for TFS last year. Watch as Miles urges his old board of directors to find the money and pay the debt.
It's now becoming untenable. We'd have to subsidize it to the tune of maybe $500,000 a year if it only has 180 kids or so. I think the time is right to do what the administration is asking to do.
In 2020, around the time his financial troubles were beginning in Colorado, Miles began expanding his charter school network to Texas. First Midland Sam Houston Elementary, then Ector College Prep in Odessa, then Austin Mendez Middle School. But by the end of the 2023 school year, as he was taking over in Houston, Miles' 3 Texas schools were nearly $2.7 million in the red. So why were Miles' new Texas schools losing money? Third Future Schools 2023 audit shows of the $25 million public tax dollars being spent on Miles' 3 Texas schools, $15 million was spent on teachers and supplies. The other $10 million, about 40% of the entire budget, was spent on unspecified administrative costs and services. Spectrum News made multiple requests over the course of several months for a detailed accounting of those administrative expenses. Third Future Schools never responded. However, included in publicly available financial audit records were the auditor's notes revealing that the deficits were documented as being due to other Third Future network schools outside of Texas and to Third Future Schools corporate in Colorado. Again, TFS Colorado declined to provide us with an explanation of why so many Texas public school dollars were being transferred to school operations in another state. And then we learned about this.
We've been supplementing that school with the general fund.
A conference call with Third Future Schools investors who were just learning about the deficits. Spectrum News requested and received from TFS an audio recording of that investors' call. In the recording, the TFS Chief Financial Officer confirms the Colorado charter school deficit was being offset by the money coming in from their charter schools in Texas.
You know, whether they're in Colorado or whether they're in Texas or, you know, whichever state they're in. So that's assessed. And then if the specific school needs funding, then the network supplements them through the general fund.
The implication that the school funds from a Texas school was being transferred to help fund TFS in Colorado. Spectrum News obtained 2 checks for more than $1 million each from Miles Charter School in Odessa to Aurora, Colorado. Our attempts over the past 5 months to reach Miles for an explanation of the payments and a response to our findings have been unsuccessful. We were referred to Third Future Schools Executive Director Zach Craddock, whom we sent a 23-question list detailing our findings. Craddock declined to respond. We also shared our findings with former Texas State Representative and school finance expert Paul Colbert. Colbert says Texas public schools should not be spending more money than they take in, and definitely should not send Texas tax dollars out of state.
I was the budget chair of education for 8 years and research director of the Senate Education Committee for 5 years. And my understanding is that it is not legal in Texas for monies from a school district in Texas to educate students in other districts in the state, let alone in other states.
Once we hear more about this, you will hear more outrage.
Ovidia Molina, president of the Texas State Teachers Association, reviewed our findings and feels the evidence is alarming. She's calling on state lawmakers to conduct a formal investigation.
I don't know where it says that we can take our public school money and send it to another state. But if there is any place that says that, it's wrong and it needs to be changed.
We have reached out to the Texas Education Agency multiple times. They have yet to respond. We have also offered detailed evidence to Education Commissioner Mike Morath of Texas public school dollars being diverted to Colorado schools. And again, we have yet to hear back.
Thanks for watching.
Public schools.
So now this one makes no sense to me. First of all, how do you go 5 months and you don't actually respond whatsoever? Well, let me tell you right now, it's already pouring in. Anna Hernandez, the Texas State Rep, is demanding an investigation by the Texas Education Agency. This is a letter that she sent to Commissioner Morath today as a result, urging them to investigate these millions of dollars. In addition to that, a number of officials all across the state of Texas have been doing the exact same thing. You've even had various activist groups who have been doing the exact same thing. And then I saw a tweet from Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee demanding action as well. And so the thing here that really jumps out to me, Joe, is that when you talk about these funds, now you're talking about, you're supposed to be using funds in Texas for Texas, and you paying bills in Colorado, and then 5 months you don't want to answer any questions, but you have all this authority to run the Houston Independent School District, and you create some schools in Colorado that you own, but you're not acting as a consultant, but you're getting paid damn near $500,000 in Texas to run an HISD school district. How in the hell you got time to be a consultant in Colorado when you got problems running HISD?
This is what happens when you get into the school business. Now, I'm not necessarily against the notion of charter schools. 15 years ago, it was a lot more hotly contested because theoretically that takes money from public schools, right? But depending on who you are and where you are, you might feel a certain way about it. That being said, the existence of charter schools and the charter school business is what makes this situation possible, right? At the end of the day, you've got somebody that made a decision from a business standpoint. He's got schools in 2 different places, and he needs one to support the other, and he can actually do it. So hopefully this is something everybody in Texas ought to be able to get on the same page about. They took some stuff that belongs to Texas and they put it over there in Colorado. I mean, but it's amazing the non-responsiveness, et cetera. Whoever wants to get on the right side of this and make it a political issue could really hammer this home, this whole notion. But what I would hope would come from it, clearly there's some problems legally and morally, but what I would hope would come from it would be something to effectively close this loophole, or to create some kind of rules that people that work at districts, not only is money not supposed to leave the state, Roland, money's not supposed to leave the district, okay? In Texas, it's not even supposed to be down the street in the next district, okay? So hopefully something comes from this that closes this loophole that keeps folks from being able to play 2 or 3 different roles. He's got schools in Texas, he's got schools in Colorado, and he's a superintendent in Houston. And so he's got all kinds of things going on here that, not only potentially break the law, but at the very least avoid, walk right in the area of a huge den of festering impropriety. And again, from a perception standpoint, shows us that students are not necessarily being served by this particular group of charter schools, and by the freedom that these people have to go from place to place and take money from taxpayers.
So Mustafa, he tells the Houston Chronicle, Mike Miles, that, quote, while he hadn't served as CEO of Third Future Schools in more than a year, go to my iPad, Anthony, the board and superintendent were conscious to ensure that Texas dollars stayed in Texas and Colorado dollars stayed in Colorado while he was leading the organization. Okay, first of all, that's nice wordplay, because you no longer lead the organization, now you're a consultant. They got you busted discussing this as a consultant. The quote is, go back to the iPad, Third Future Schools have been very careful, and they've always passed their audits easily. They do audits in Texas, they do audits in Colorado, so they're a good organization. They're very careful about not commingling funds. They follow the law very carefully. Anything else is just to be dismissed out of hand. Okay, but here's the problem here, player. Not as easy to do when there's a check that's going from Texas to Colorado. So they're trying to dismiss it, and ain't as easy as dismissing $10 million.
Right. It's about transparency and accountability. I mean, Joe laid it out. But, when you don't have those 2 elements in place, then you find these types of situations, these unfortunate situations, because the kids are the ones who end up getting hurt, actually happening. So if someone is doing an audit, there are different ways for audits to be done. I've been a part of audits. So someone needs to take a look at the individuals or the accounting firms or whoever was actually doing the audits to see why they weren't capturing some of this. The other part of it is, why does it take so long when you see improprieties for the government to get engaged and to begin to unpack exactly what's going on and to make sure that there's no additional dollars that are moving while you're trying to get an investigation in place? So there are a number of gaps that are currently happening here. And if we just began to actually put systems in place where, folks can track what's going on, then it'll help to have additional accountability, along with making sure there's real enforcement actions when we find these types of things that where there may be improprieties happening.
And look, bottom line is, the reason this is angering folks, Randy, in Houston is because he's making massive cuts to close a $450 million budget shortfall that's impacting people. And the reality is this here, he's still a consultant for this school that he's launched there. They're saying, hey, man, you need to keep your eye completely focused on what the hell we doing here.
Right. I mean, that's why this is inexcusable, because it comes down to kids suffering, and particularly after, what has come out about how kids are faring with test scores and things after what they went through with COVID. We don't have time to be lagging behind for resources to be cut, particularly for them to be cut because of some impropriety, but just straight up crime. It's interesting, everyone who's watching today, most of us go to work. And if our bosses were to send us some questions and we did not answer them for 5 days, there would be a problem. But you're telling me that there were serious questions posed about this issue 5 months ago, and this man has not had to step up? I mean, where is the oversight and the accountability, particularly when it matters so much to people?
Indeed, indeed. All right, folks, got to go to a break. We come back. The body of Air Force Airman Fortson returned to his family in Georgia. We'll show you that next on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network.
Coming soon to the Black Star Network.
It was my junior year at Georgetown, and Spike calls me and he says, Malcolm, what are you doing next year? So, graduating, you know? He said, take a year off, work on Malcolm X. I said, okay.
But first of all, for the folks who don't know, Spike is
my cousin. Spike is my cousin.
Just for the person watching, like, how the hell is Spike just gonna tell you that it's true? It's true.
Fanbase is pioneering a new era of social media for the creator economy. This next generation social media app with over 600,000 users is raising $17 million, and now is your chance to invest. For details on how to invest, visit startengine.com/fanbase or scan the QR code. Another way we're giving you the freedom to be you without limits.
What's up, everybody? It's your girl, Latasha from the A.
And you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
The body of a Georgia airman who was killed by a Florida deputy earlier this month has returned home. A U.S. senior airman, Roger Fortson's body, arrived at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport today aboard an honor flight. His casket was pulled from the plane, draped with an American flag. Fortson was fatally shot on May 3rd in Florida by an Okaloosa County, Florida sheriff's deputy who was responding to a call about a disturbance in progress. The deputy says he reacted in self-defense after he encountered a 23-year-old man armed with a gun. And so services are being set as his family, again, now has to deal with the reality of burying their son. And also last night, a number of his Air Force buddies held a candlelight vigil in his honor as well. They are rallying around the family as it relates to this case. And so we certainly will keep you updated on this. Folks, the Biden-Harris administration, they have been creating new procedures dealing with airlines, dealing with banks and overages and other issues. And guess what? Now these folks mad. The airlines are now suing the Biden-Harris administration over rules requiring the disclosure of all fees associated with purchasing a ticket. Yeah, airlines, they're mad. So American Airlines, Delta, United, JetBlue, Alaska, Hawaiian Airlines filed a lawsuit with the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals over the new rules that require passenger-specific or itinerary-specific fees to be disclosed to travelers. The Department of Transportation's rule requires junk fees or fees charged for checked bags, carry-on bags, and changing or canceling reservations to be disclosed to customers up front. Now, also a federal judge in Texas has temporarily blocked the Biden administration's plan to lower credit card late fees. Northern District Texas Judge Mark Pittman sided with the big banks and major credit card companies. Of course, they collect billions of dollars in revenue every year in late fees, and we're looking to stop the proposal from going into effect. The new regulations would have set a ceiling of $8 for most credit card late fees, or required banks to show why they should charge more than $8 for such fees. It was supposed to go into effect on Tuesday. This is what happens, Randy, when you have folks who want to do the right thing, and big business is like, oh, hell no, we ain't trying to do this. And so for everybody who's voting, let's be real clear. The Biden-Harris administration trying to make sure you don't get screwed with junk fees on airline tickets when it comes to credit cards as well. But big business is like, yeah, we want to continue. And frankly, they're judge shopping, hoping that conservative Trump MAGA judges side with them.
I was so happy when I saw that the Biden-Harris administration was moving on this. We've all been where we're shopping for a plane ticket. We see the price. We're like, okay, $328. And then by the time you check out, you're all the way up to $500 and you don't understand what happened. And that's what they were trying to regulate. I mean, it should not be too much to ask to say, please tell me for what I'm paying. Tell me what these charges are for. And they're saying, no, we want to keep these charges hidden. That should not even be a question. There should not be a question that we should be able to know exactly what we're paying for. But, you know, big business and the power they have is ridiculous.
Mustafa, don't forget you also have pharmaceutical companies suing, trying to stop Biden-Harris from cutting pharmaceutical prices.
I mean, it goes down to the fleecing of America. We understand that when we say profit over people, these are prime examples of what that looks like. And we really need to give great consideration to our vote to make sure that we can change these dynamics. If you put, you know, the Biden administration back in the office, then they're going to continue to move forward. But they can't just do it by themselves. You got to make sure that they're voting up and down the ticket if these are issues that you care about. If you like giving your money away, if you like paying more than you should have to for services, then vote for somebody else. So you know, it's really quite simple. Again, profit over people. Corporations currently do not care about you. They care about their bottom line. They care about the profits that they make, but we can change that dynamic.
Well, what really also jumps out here, Joe, is it shows you a contrast. Who do you want to vote for? And the reality is Republicans are siding with the pharmaceutical industry, and they don't want drug prices to be cut. And Republicans have tried to get rid of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which is speaking about the bank fees. So if you're voting out there, again, it's very clear. You have Democrats who support getting rid of junk fees for credit cards, getting rid of junk fees for airlines, and lowering drug prices. And Republicans and Trump, they want to shut all that down, and they want all those fees to stay in place.
Yeah, I mean, transparency is big, right? And so one step, you know, even as it pertains to this airline thing, which was, of course, conveniently filed in the Fifth Circuit. That's, you know, not only is it judge shopping, but it's circuit shopping. I mean, the whole thing. You know, it wasn't going to undo them. It was going to require them to be stated, so people knew what they actually were. This wasn't even a drive to get rid of them as it pertains to the airline-related fees. You just had to disclose them. They don't even want disclosure. They want it to be a secret, right? And so people have to really look, and it's not sexy, it's not fun, it's not exciting, it's not going to make your toes curl. It's not like a great, fantastic speech by Barack Obama or John F. Kennedy. But to understand how the things that the Biden administration is trying to do that affects people's day-to-day lives, transparency, lower drug prices, you know, the pharmaceutical folks are against that. Then what does that tell you? There has to be a balance stricken when you have a situation where literally people that need medication can't afford it. You have to deal with that and address that. Those things are addressing needs. And so you have to pay attention to what's happening with these things, because this is how your vote is going to affect your reality. And you would hate to get on the other end of it, see that you did the wrong thing, and have it be too late.
Well, contrast, elections about contrast, and folks got to have facts. And so let's be clear. Republicans are ticked off, even with the capping of insulin at $35 a month. They want those caps lifted. But some of y'all want to holler that I'm caping for a party and living on the plantation. But go right ahead and keep paying your junk fees for credit cards and airlines, as well as paying $400 or $500 a month for insulin, because that's going to be the case if Republicans win power. All right, quick break. Come back. Marketplace, right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network.
On a next, A Balanced Life with me, Dr. Jackie. Staying balanced is tough enough with the normal day-to-day stuff going on. But what happens when we get the unexpected? It may come crashing down through a bad diagnosis for either you or a loved one.
My son, he actually was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and it came at a very challenging time in my life. I had a lot going on with starting a new business.
How to cope and even stay balanced when even the walls are crashing in. That's on the next A Balanced Life with me, Dr. Jackie, here at Black Star Network.
Hello, I'm Marissa Mitchell, a news anchor at Fox 5 DC. Hey, what's up? It's Sammy Roman, and you are watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
The home ownership gap is widening between African Americans and white folks in America, but within the black community, more black women own homes than black men. Well, a Texas couple launched an initiative to make more black men become homeowners. Kevin and Aisha Shelton founded Black Men Buy Houses to reverse the trends of home ownership disparity within the black community. They joined us from Houston. Glad to have y'all here. Okay, what led y'all to say this is it? Was it something personal? Was it friends? Was it fraternity brothers? Was it loved ones? What was it?
So it was actually something really, really personal. When we first got together, Aisha bought her first home at 23, and I was 30 before I had my first opportunity. But we got together. I was paying $1,350 a month in rent, and her whole mortgage was $700. So obviously I was doing something wrong. And that's what started the journey of discovering not only home ownership, but the power of using that home equity to start your business, build wealth, do a lot of things for your family.
So what was it, Aisha? Was it the interest rates? Was it size of house? You know, what was it? What was the disparity?
I think the disparity, what was easy for me was it seemed possible, right? It wasn't something that was a foreign idea to me to purchase a home. And so when the opportunity presented itself, and to be clear, I purchased a home in 2008. So it was a very different market and a very different time. But most women that I know, most of my colleagues own homes, and it's not even a question. We bought homes at, a very young age.
And so, Kevin, for you, were you not seeing brothers who you knew and hung around who were talking about owning homes? They were still renting?
Oh, of course. So it was not a conversation. We were talking about cars and clubs and money, but we weren't talking about home ownership and even figuring it out. For me, coming from Third Ward in Houston, Texas, a lot of my friends didn't have parents who were homeowners, and even though my mother owned a home and my grandmother owned a home, nobody really showed me how to do it, especially from a man's perspective. And I had the opportunity to buy a home when I was 19, but I couldn't figure it out. And this was a $9,000 home with a $1,000 payment, and I didn't have $1,000, and I didn't have the credit. And lo and behold, I could have gotten a co-signer, I could have borrowed $1,000, and I just couldn't figure it out. And I really wanted to have the conversation that we as men in our community weren't having, which is you can buy a home, here's the resources to buy a home, and here's a group of men supporting you in buying a home, which is something that the women were doing.
So, what have y'all created? Have you created a website, app? What have you done?
So we've created a large event that ultimately has become a website. So Black Men Buy Houses was a vision that we had in 2021 that ultimately became our inaugural event in 2023. We had over 900 registrants for the first year and almost 400 men in attendance, and everybody just passionate about home ownership. And that is something that spurred not only conversations across the country. We partnered with NARAB to go on a national tour, just bringing this message across the board. And here we are on the tail end of our 2024 event, and we had an overwhelming reception, again, from men just passionate about trying to figure it out. And it's something that I love to see, a room full of Black men just inspired and wanting to know more. And for us, that's really the journey, is not only having the conversation, but actually creating homeowners from these events and ultimately from the website and resource hub.
Questions from our panel. Mustafa, you first.
Yeah, well, thank you both for all that you're doing. Yeah, question for me is, how does home ownership or ownership of land, two things that I was taught when I was really young, help us to address the wealth gap that exists inside of our community?
So, the majority of American wealth is based in our homes. And a lot of black families don't get to ride that equity wave up. So, if you look at the disparity of home ownership, even from the financial crisis in 2008, we see home ownership in the black community completely drop. And the reason why is not only have interest rates gone up, but the amount of down payment has gone up, and it's harder to buy a home, and affordability is something that is very hard for us to overcome. So, for our community, home ownership is stability. It gives us a stable payment that we can count on over time. And that's one of the biggest ways that we can start taking chances in starting those businesses or paying for college tuition for our children and not having the burden of either high interest debt or high rent cost as we kind of go through these economic cycles like we're seeing now.
Well, and I feel like it also normalizes homeownership for the black man, right? The conversation, just the initiative of black men buying houses kind of normalizes buying homes. And before we buy cars, before we do the things that are flashy and sexy online, to buy a house. Did we lose him?
How about that, Joe?
Yeah, I certainly want to say we appreciate what it is that you're doing. I wonder, as it pertains to having this program to have X number of men become aware, become home buyers, what is the profile of those men? What's the educational profile? Because what we're hoping is, there are a lot of alternatives, and there always have been. We've grown up on them. Our parents, brothers that were electricians and that were plumbers and made really good money doing other things. And it just might be that brothers may be a little less likely to go to college, but that doesn't necessarily have to mean that they're less likely to make the money that they need to own a house. And with this knowledge component being very important. So what have you found about the educational and economic profiles of the men that you're trying to reach? And is there work that has to be done in conjunction with other organizations to make more men eligible once they have the knowledge?
So I'll tell you, the first year, we didn't recognize how important it was to collect that information. The second year, as we're having conversations with sponsors, they did want to know more about that demographic. And what we found is that we have a lot of educated men that were a part of the conversation and that wanted to have the conversation. But we also had young adults. So we had people invite their grandchildren and their nephews to say, hey, this is something that you should consider regardless of how old you are. And so we did have the opportunity to collect that data this year. We do have a lot of educated men that came to the conference and were interested in the workshop. But also, I think that we had some tradesmen come too.
And we own a construction company, so we're talking to men who aren't necessarily college graduates on a day-to-day basis. And owning a home is not tied to going to college. Yeah. Owning a home is tied to your economic stability and your family, right? If we look back historically, the families coming from post-slavery, the families coming through the civil rights movement, they didn't necessarily have a college degree, but they understood the importance of ownership. And I think we just have to go back to our roots as a community to champion owning our community. And honestly, men who are in these existing neighborhoods, they should lean on our elders in our community because there's a lot of opportunity to buy some of these older homes from these older families, and you don't need a college degree to do that.
Thank you.
Great point. Randy?
I really applaud your mission. So needed. Are you partnering with larger organizations, even banks, to ensure that that people are educated and committed to buying some homes?
So the conversation has definitely been started. The first national organization that we've had the opportunity to partner with is the National Association of Black Real Estate Brokers, NARAB. So that's a great platform. They've taken us on their Black Wealth Tour this year. So we are a component of the Black Wealth Tour for the National Association of Black Real Estate Brokers. Locally, we partner with one of the local Alpha Phi Alpha chapters, 100 Black Men, the local chapter as well. But we are very excited about taking this message message across the country. And our next mission is faith-based organizations as well. We just want to reach out to everywhere that Black men are, and have this conversation and normalize this conversation.
Well, there's no shock y'all partner with the alphas. That ain't that hard.
Okay.
Just saying that ain't that hard. I do have to ask, are y'all doing anything with Operation Hope? Because they're all about trying to increase folks' credit score about 50 to 75 points, which obviously has a direct impact on lowering the interest rates.
So we've reached out to a lot of organizations similar to Operation Hope. We haven't connected with them specifically, but we have a partnership with the Urban League and a partnership with a lot of other local chapters. As we go on this national tour, we're starting those conversations with some of the larger organizations like Operation Hope. So we actually have a stop in Atlanta, and we do plan to connect with them in their office because our goal is to get this message out to as many Black men as possible. This is a completely free event. It's completely free resources. We don't want to stop men from accessing this information. It is a great time to buy a home because it's never been easier from a program perspective. There's money for down payment. There's money for assistance. There's resources to help with credit. So there's nothing stopping you except for you.
Gotcha. So give folks your website.
So it's blackblkmenbuyhouses.com. And then marriageandrealestate.com is our organization for the Black family.
Gotcha. All right then. All right. Well, I'm sending John Hope Bryant a text for Operation Hope. So I don't. No disrespect to staff, but I don't go through staff. I go right direct to the folks. So trust me, that'll be real easy for y'all to make the connect. Because trust me, he'll be texting me back shortly. Appreciate it. Glad to see you doing this here, and it's a great thing. But again, though, for a lot of people out there, these brothers who and even sisters understand. People are spending. I told y'all he already hit me back, so I already send y'all. I'll send to Carol. Tell y'all who y'all need to connect with to do this. So he just hit me back. Hold on. All right, Carol, I'm sending to you now. So one of the things that I keep telling is a lot of our people, they're spending a crazy amount of money renting homes, and they're not getting anything out of it.
Yep.
And it just makes no sense. Now, I do tell people there are some instances where leasing or renting makes sense because if you're transient, if depending upon where you are, it makes sense. But it's just for a lot of folk. Listen, I would rather you get into a home and build some equity and then be able to do something with that as opposed to just keep spending your money on other stuff that's not going anywhere. So. Good luck.
The rent is not getting any cheaper.
The interest rate on rent is 1,000%. So people just need to realize that.
Yep.
And guess what? They can keep jacking that rent up as much as they want to, as long as demand is there.
Yep.
Yep.
All right. We appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, folks. Some sad news in memoriam. Christopher Etley, who, of course, a brilliant legal mind, University of California at Berkeley, passed away over the weekend. He, of course, really was a strong affirmative action advocate. Chris Etley, trained, taught so many young minds, and again, passed away this weekend. And so many folks definitely have been talking about losing such a significant legal scholar, Joe. Joe, you're on mute.
Oh, boy, I don't see that.
Go ahead. There you go.
Okay, there you go. Sorry about that. Yeah, so here's another legal mind that did so much to help a lot of us. Some of us are out in the well trying cases, et cetera, but there are thought leaders that are training based on the law, based on what's supposed to happen, particularly as it pertains to affirmative action, which has gone back and forth in terms of how it's been evaluated from the Supreme Court on down. And for people to understand these nuances and to have these particular pieces of information and things that we can take from and listen from. I was just talking to a mutual friend of Milton Grimes the other day, and I want to get in contact with him and just sit under him and listen. This is another one of these brothers that helped a whole lot of us, and hopefully we can follow his example. May he rest in peace.
Also, folks, Houston has also lost a civil rights and ministerial giant in Reverend William Lawson. Reverend William Lawson was the founder of Wheeler Avenue Baptist Church there in 3rd Ward, Houston. He passed away at the age of 95 years old. Very much involved in civil rights, in economic rights. He also, his daughter Melanie Lawson right there, she longtime reporter anchor at KTRK TV in Houston. There you see him pictured with Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And again, very much involved. An amazing, amazing brother, and also a proud member of Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. Reverend William Lawson, dead at the age of 95. Folks, that is it for us. Let me thank Joe. Let me thank Randy, Mustafa as well for being on today's show. Thank you so very much, folks. I shall see you guys tomorrow. Tomorrow we're going to talk about the National Black Voter Project. We're going to get today, but the Black Lives Matter interview went longer than I expected because it was information that I needed to get. So we'll do that. Folks, you hear me talk about this all the time. And I say this, and it is no joke. You know, these media upfronts are going on right now. Disney and all these companies, they are appearing today. This is right here. The Hollywood Reporter had this story. Jimmy Kimmel, he was speaking up there at the Disney upfronts, and almost 70% of all advertising dollars are allocated during the upfronts. Basically, black media, black-owned media gets none of that money. And so then they have a second pool of money that goes out around September. And then there's something that's called the scatter market. So basically, what they really call was in September the scatter market. But let me tell y'all what happens in like November, December. So in November, December, folk go, oh, we got some money left over in our budgets. That's when black-owned media mostly gets a phone call. It'll be, oh, we got 30,000, 40,000, 50,000. We got to spend it, so, you know, what y'all got. And, you know, the Black-owned Media Collective, we've been fighting, trying to get that money during the upfronts. And so over the last several weeks, we've been meeting with various agencies, Publicis, Dentsu. We've got meetings set up with Group M the first week in June. My partners with Urban Edge Network. And we still, black-owned media is getting 1% of the $340 billion being spent on advertising, and that, folks, is an abomination. So we continue that particular fight. So when you support this show, I came to the office today, and there were some folks, Judith Johnson, Donovan White, I had some other, there are some people, let's see, Mary Oliver Benoit. I got some folks who actually do bill pay. There are people who actually tithe to us every single month. They have checks sent in, and I appreciate their support. You know, Lisa Jenkins has literally been tithing to this show every month since we launched. Cheryl Dugan, tithing every month. I get constant donations from Napoleon Keys, William Thorpe. So there are people who absolutely believe in this show, believe in the work that we are doing, and so your support is absolutely crucial. I told you we plan on traveling down to Tarrant County, to Fort Worth, when they have the next rally there for Crystal Mason to cover that live. We're going to be in June. We're going to be, of course, in D.C. covering the massive March of the Poor People's Campaign. We hope. We plan on being at the Democratic National Convention in August in Chicago. We also want to be able to be on the road, taking the show to a lot of your cities and towns to hear what you have to say for the election. So your support is critical. So our goal at our fan club is real simple, to get 20,000 of our fans contributing on average $50 each. It's $4.19 a month, 13 cents a day. That's $1 million if we raise it. That is a huge to offset the expenses for us folks, because this is $195,000 a month to what it costs to operate the Black Star Network. And so you see your check and money order to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C., 2003-7-0196. Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle, Roland at RolandSMartin.com. Roland at RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. And also, folks, on YouTube, y'all slow as hell. Come on now, we got 82 to hit 1,000 likes. Let's go. You can also, again, give that way. You can download the Black Star Network app, Apple phone, Android phone, Apple TV, Android TV, Roku, Amazon Fire TV, Xbox One, Samsung Smart TV, and of course you can get a copy of my book, White Fear, How the Browning of America is Making White Folks Lose Their Minds, available at bookstores nationwide. And I am continuing to personally autograph books. We shipped out another 100 or so books today of White Fear, and so we're getting those out of the door. I got more books to sign, so when I get home, I'll be signing tonight. So trust me, folks, some of y'all are emailing me. We are doing, and again, because I got to personally autograph them, y'all, we have to package them by hand. So it's not like the distribution center could do this here, because I'm personally autographing them. And so please be patient as we get the books out. That's it, folks. I'll see y'all tomorrow. Marilyn Mosby will be joining us as she seeks to get a pardon after she was convicted of spending her own money, getting her own money out of her funds. She's convicted of fraud. She'll be joining us tomorrow right here on Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. I'll see y'all tomorrow. Holla! Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?